Before I get going on today's video, I have a goal. And I want to get to 24,000 subscribers before playoffs time is here. So, to the over 23,000 already, thank you so much for joining me along on this ride. And if you haven't already, what's stopping you? Free Texans videos all year long. Watch parties. We go crazy here on the channel. So make sure you hit that sub button for free Texans videos all year long. Let's get to 24K before the playoffs. So here's the main question in today's video. Who should we want the Texans to face in the wild card round? Here are the three options that you have. It's either going to be the Ravens, the Steelers, or the Chargers. Those are the three teams. So let me know down in the comment section and give me a reason why you would want to face either the Ravens, Steelers, or Chargers on wild card weekend. Because coming up, I'm going to break down all three of those matchups and tell you, out of those three, who do the Texans match up the best against? And I know there's going to be people out there in the comment section, it doesn't matter who we face. You just got to beat whoever's across from you. Yes, I know that. But in a world where I'm kind of looking forward to this wild card weekend, I want to see a Texans win in the playoffs. And if maybe I can manifest it a little bit where the Texans have an easier opponent in round one, well, I'm going to try to do that. Here's the AFC playoff picture as it stands right now. Obviously, Chiefs locked up the number 1 seed. Bills locked up the number 2 seed. The Ravens and Steelers still fighting for that 3 seed and AFC North title. The Texans, they are locked in to that 4 seed. And then you have the Chargers right there at the number 6. And then obviously the Broncos there at 7, with Miami and Cincinnati still creeping in to possibly make the playoffs in week 18. So let's get the easy one out of the way. First up, you don't want to face the Texans. We saw that on Christmas Day. Obviously, it's not a good matchup. And even though maybe you didn't show it all in the second half and you kind of played more reserved as the game went on, you're playing up against who I believe should probably be the MVP of this season in Lamar Jackson. This dude has been on a tear. Almost 4,000 passing yards, over 850 rushing yards, 41 total touchdowns, 4 interceptions. That's reason number one you don't want to play Baltimore, because this dude is on a heater right now. And maybe it helps you that they're coming to play in Houston and you don't have to travel to Baltimore if, later down the road in the playoffs. But if I had my choice of which team I would want the Texans to face first, it would definitely not be the Ravens. And if we go back to those offensive stats that the Texans put up on Christmas Day, only 211 total yards on offense. C.J. Stroud was 17 of 31, 185 yards a pick, 58 rushing yards. That means 3.4 yards per carry when you break down the numbers. A little bit over 24 minutes of possession, and you had that one turnover. The offense looked horrid up against the Baltimore Ravens. But good news is this. The Ravens, they can clinch the division on Saturday. They face the Cleveland Browns. If they lose to the Browns, you could be facing the Pittsburgh Steelers. But you could be facing the Baltimore Ravens. If the Ravens win, though, they clinch the division. They are the number 3 seed. If the Ravens were to lose to the Browns and then the Steelers were to beat the Bengals later on Saturday, then you would be facing the Ravens in round 1. So if you're watching on Saturday and you don't want to play the Ravens, you want them to win, or if they lose, you want the Bengals to win. That's kind of that rooting guide on Saturday. So there's step number 1. But let's look beyond that, because I think more than likely the Ravens are going to, in fact, beat the Browns on Saturday. The Bengals and Steelers, that's another game all in itself. I think, the Bengals have a much better chance to beat the Steelers than the Browns do the Ravens. But coming up, who do the Texans match up best with? Who's that, matchup that I think the Texans could go ahead and go into the divisional round? I'll tell you who that is in just a moment, but couldn't do today's show if it wasn't for our amazing sponsors over at PrizePicks. Get started today with America's #1 daily fantasy sports app out there with over 5 million active members. Get in on the daily action and become part of the PrizePicks community today. Make your picks in less than 60 seconds and turn your sports opinions into real money. It's playoff time. Not just for, professional Texans, we also have playoff time in college football. And if you're watching this, maybe during New Year's, happy 2025, happy New Year's to you. But also, you're probably watching this awesome slate of college football playoff games. This is my lineup I'm going with. Quinn Ewers, more than 2.5 passing touchdowns. Dylan Gabriel for the Oregon Ducks, more than 1.5 passing touchdowns. Cameron Scadabo, he's been a beast. But Texas actually has the third best rushing defense among all of college football. So I'm going to go less than 100.5 rushing yards. And then Sam Levitt. He's been talking a lot of mess. Can he back it up? I don't know. I think I'm going to go with the 1.5 interceptions, the more on that. You can use my picks, go against my picks. Just do it over on PrizePicks, where now you can win up to 1,000 times your money. And for my listeners right now, I have a great deal for you. Use code CLNS when you download the PrizePicks app and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code CLNS on PrizePicks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. So get started today with PrizePicks. Run your game. Now let's take a deep dive into the numbers between those other two teams the Texans could face, the Chargers and the Steelers. And when you talk about football, when you talk about matchups, you talk about two things, in my opinion, whenever I'm really looking at it. The first off, you got to look at the defense of these two teams. How have they been so far in the year? And surprisingly, with all the hype around the Steelers defense, when you actually look at the numbers, the Chargers actually might be a much better defense than the Steelers. The Chargers are 5th in sacks, 9th in interceptions, 1st in the NFL in points per game allowed. Also, 8th in the NFL in pass yards per game allowed. They are 17th in rush yards per game allowed, which Texans rushing attack really hasn't been there, where the Steelers have a little bit of a leg up on the rush yards per game allowed and the interception. So defense, I kind of give the slight edge, I think, to Los Angeles, to the Chargers. Now let's look at the other side of the football, and more importantly, let's look at the QB matchup between these two possible foes for the Houston Texans in the playoffs. Russell Wilson and Justin Herbert. Justin Herbert, I think, overall is a better quarterback than Russell Wilson. Now, given these stats also, Russell Wilson did not play for the start of the season. I believe he missed the first 5 or 6 games for Pittsburgh. Justin Herbert, though, I think is a much more talented quarterback at this stage in his career than Russell Wilson did at his stage in his career. 21 touchdowns, only 3 interceptions on the year for Justin Herbert, a 65% completion percentage, and, the average around the same for Russell Wilson and Justin Herbert. So I give the slight edge to that as well for the Los Angeles Chargers. But in the running department, I think it's a clear landslide in favor of the Pittsburgh Steelers. They have a two-headed monster at running back. In the backfield, they have Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren, a combined almost 1,500 yards on the year, 6 total touchdowns between the two of them. They are a really good thunder and lightning duo over there in Pittsburgh. I think they definitely scare me more than the Chargers running game, even though J.K. Dobbins for Los Angeles has been pretty good this year. A little bit of a resurgence. He's had a lot of injuries in his career, but making a good name for himself down there with the Chargers. 177 carries, 842 yards, 9 touchdowns on the year for J.K. Dobbins. I still think the Steelers' rushing attack does worry me a little bit more than the Chargers does, even though J.K. Dobbins has had a pretty good year for L.A. And then as we look at the receiving targets, Ladd McConkey's the top target for the Chargers. Rookie season, over 1,000 yards, 7 touchdowns. Really, really good season for Ladd McConkey in his first year out of Georgia. He's a little bit of a smaller receiver, more of a route-running, possession-type receiver. Is going to try to beat you with his quick cuts out or in. That's the kind of receiver that you're dealing with Ladd McConkey. And then on the other side, for the Pittsburgh Steelers, their top target, George Pickens. These two guys couldn't be more different of wide receiving targets, right? Like, McConkey's going to try to beat you with his precision route running, and George Pickens is just going to try to outman you and jump over you and get the football. So, there, I feel comfortable with the cornerbacks that the Texans have with Stingley and Laster to guard either one of these guys. But in that, I honestly, it's a toss-up because their games are so different between George Pickens and Ladd McConkey as the top targets for their respective teams. But my favorite unit, my favorite position, and the edge that I'm going to give in that is going to be with the Chargers offensive line. I'm a former big boy. I love O-line play, and the Chargers have a very skilled unit. They have Joe Alt, who was a first-round pick, and Rashawn Slater, who was a first-round pick, at the bookend tackles positions for both those teams. They have had pretty good years. I believe they also have Bradley Bozeman on the inside, Trey Pickens as well. The Chargers offensive line unit is a very skilled unit, and I think that could be a determining factor when playing them in the playoffs if they're able to kind of mitigate this Texans defensive line that has been one of the best in the entire NFL this season. And for that reason, because of the defense and because of the quarterback, I'm going to say I think the best matchup for the Texans at this point would be if you did play the Pittsburgh Steelers. So, everybody, we want the Ravens to win on Saturday. We're all rooting for the Ravens, right? We need them to win on Saturday because I think, once again, the best matchup and the best way the Texans can advance in the playoffs is if they play the Pittsburgh Steelers in round one. But regardless of, who they play, it doesn't matter who they play. If they don't get out of this funk, if they don't play some better football, if they don't play some sound football on the offensive side, none of this matters. This whole discussion is mute because the Texans need to turn it around. They need to start playing some better football, or else it is going to be another one-and-done season like we've seen with the Texans before. And another season down the drain where a lot of hope, a lot of expectation towards the beginning of the year, and it just came out flat towards the end. So the Texans really need to step up, or else, like I said, none of this matters at all. As I said at the very top of the video, if you made it to the end and you're not subscribed, why not? You made it to the very end of the video. I'm giving you free content all year long. All I ask, hit that like button, comment down below, and hit that subscribe button because I am the #1 Texans channel on YouTube for good reason. I give you videos all year long, 100% free. The most lit watch parties on YouTube, they're right here on Texans Today. So join the family and hit that subscribe button.